Holy sh! This thing's tiny! And this is the kind of thing you can do with integrated graphics. Oh, gosh. But with so many different processors to choose, how do you know you're getting the right one? And that's where the Ryzen 5 4600G comes into play. This processor has 6 cores, 12 threads, and it's got a very low price tag. The Ryzen 5 4600G is an awesome CPU. It comes with 6 cores and 12 threads, as I mentioned. It has a TDP of 65 watts and has a max boost clock of 4.2 gigahertz. And, well, it has this much cache. But it has the integrated Vega 7 graphics, which is the same graphics paired with the Ryzen 5 5600G. So, on the surface, this CPU seems pretty awesome. A great productivity machine with great built-in graphics for only $100 on Newegg or Amazon, brand new as of the recording of this video. I mean, heck yeah, I want to get that right now. But is it really worth it in 2023? I mean, the AM4 platform is dead. And what kind of build would even put this in? That's where this thing comes into play. This thing is the ASRock X300, and it comes with a case, a motherboard, and a power supply. I mean, that's pretty awesome. I got this thing for $150. Now, unfortunately, you can't put a graphics card in this thing, but that's where you can just make a normal build. And then later down the line, whenever you have more money, just grab a graphics card, insert that thing in, and you got one epic gaming PC. For the perspective on pricing for these builds, here's a little chart that I made. This chart gets me to my next point, which is budget gaming. Using all new parts, you can get an entire PC with the Ryzen 5 4600G for $350. Now, there are alternatives such as the 5600G and 5700G, but those run for pretty different prices. And there's very little difference between the 5600G and the 4600G. Other alternatives would be other barebone PCs, such as this one with a Radeon 680M that has significantly better performance than the Vega 7 graphics inside the Ryzen 5 4600G. Now, you might be wondering, why am I talking about all these small form factor builds? And the reason why I'm talking about it is due to the obnoxious pricing in terms of typical ATX builds. I mean, PCs are expensive. The Ryzen 5 7600 and the Intel Core i5 13400 is like $230 alone on Newegg right now. Not to mention the cost of the motherboards and the RAM. And so, going back a generation like this to the Ryzen 5 4600G can save you a tremendous amount of money, with the AM4 platform now being dead. But with that said, that also means that the Ryzen 5 4600G has to compete against other cheap processors, such as its own brother, the Ryzen 5 4500, and a 12th or 13th gen i3. And in my case, I actually built a PC with an i3 12100F at $70. I mean, to me, this was a great buy because I already had a graphics card that I used for the PC. And so, when looking at these alternatives, if you decide that you're going to make a PC with a Ryzen 5 4600G, you should only really do it if you're going to either 1, make a computer that's really tiny, like a small form factor build, or 2, you're just going to make a big PC, but just upgrade it later down the line and add a graphics card. But, with that in mind, how do these two situations actually fare? Well, let's take a look at some benchmarks. So starting off, we gotta try this APU just right by itself. And what better way to do that than with the most important game of all, Minecraft. Doing Minecraft just bare bones by itself with fancy graphics, smooth lighting, and render distance at 12, we saw a pretty awesome performance, but that's kind of what to expect. But what really impressed me is that I tried to use shaders with Minecraft. And honestly, this APU kind of impressed me because with medium silver shaders, it held its own quite remarkably. Next up, I wanted to try something more demanding. So I booted up Elden Ring and I got my friend to play a little bit of gameplay. And it was playable. For the most part, it was above 30 FPS and it was just kind of an enjoyable experience all around.
afterwards, I embarked upon Lara Croft Simulator 2015, Rise of the Tomb Raider from 2015, and while it was at low settings, what I'm finding from both this and Elden Ring is that I'm just able to kind of forget that I'm playing on an APU. I can just play the game. And with that, there's just one more thing I want to stress about this APU just by itself, and that's that it's surprisingly similar to my 750 Ti. For example, take a look at this footage right here, and just see the two side by side. On the left side, I've got the Ryzen 5 4600G, and on the right side, I've got the 750 Ti. Of course, the dedicated graphics card is still doing better, but the Vega 7 graphics on this thing is still no slouch.
Speaking of powerful graphics cards, just how powerful of a graphics card can we put in this thing? I don't know. I think I'll check this one out.
So, just as a quick rundown for the Ryzen 5 4600G being paired with a 3070, when I played Control here, it for some reason locked my frame rate, but overall it was just a great experience. I played with max settings at 1080p, and it was just overall pretty fun. For the next thing, I had Elden Ring, and on this game, it was really starting to show the limits of the Ryzen 5 4600G. As you can see in this footage here, I couldn't get it maxed out to 90% or above on the graphics card. But where it really hurt was the Cyberpunk benchmark. This, you could see the Ryzen 5 4600 finally bending to its knees as it struggles to tame the beast that is this 3070 in this demanding game.
Whoa! But the 3070 here? This is small talk. Why would you stop only at a 3070 to test the Ryzen 5 4600G? No. We gotta take it one step further. We gotta see if this thing can handle the Radeon 6970 from 2011.
Well, it's about what you would expect.
So, to sum it all up, is the Ryzen 5 4600G really worth it in 2023? Well, it depends. There's some pros and cons to it. For example, one of the biggest pros is that the Ryzen 5 4600G has similar graphical performance to a 750 Ti, which just makes it great for small form factor builds like this one. Additionally, it's just a great CPU with 6 cores and 12 threads. You could pair this thing with like a 3060 or an RX 6600 or something weaker, and you're gonna have a great time gaming. But this also gets me into some of the cons. For example, there's some graphics cards that you shouldn't pair with this CPU, and that's because it doesn't have support for PCIe Gen 4. So you're not going to be able to run a 6500 XT on it. You're not going to be able to run any Intel Arc graphics card for that matter without severe bottlenecks. And I mean bad, like the performance worse than the APU itself. And additionally, it's on a dead platform. So if you want to buy it new, you might not be able to for much longer. Well, but this could also be a pro because you can look at eBay. I mean, I got mine on eBay for 45 bucks. And so you just, take a look out for some good deals like that. And then lastly, for the cons, it just has tough competition. I mean, why would you get the 4600G when it can get its cheaper counterpart, the 4500, or an Intel Core i3 12100F? And so, with all that said, I still believe this CPU is a nice one. I really like mine for my use case. And if it fits your use case and it fits your budget, then you should go ahead. You should get the 4600G. And with that said, if there's anything else to take away from this video, it's that I guess the moral of the story is the Ryzen 5 4600G just demonstrates why you should go back a generation or two for PC parts. It'll just save you a tremendous amount of money. And so, just keep that in mind, and have a happy time shopping.